My name is Leah Greer. I am 34 years old, and I work as a forensic accountant in Charlotte. Most people hear that title and picture someone sitting alone in a quiet office, surrounded by dusty files. And honestly, they are not entirely wrong. I spend long hours staring at columns of numbers on a screen, sometimes with cold coffee at my elbow and the rest of the building dark and empty around me. But here is what most people do not understand about numbers. They never lie. If you are patient enough, if you sit with them long enough and look carefully enough, they will always tell you the truth. That belief has shaped my entire career. It also changed my family forever on a Christmas Eve I will never forget. I grew up in a house where being reliable was the highest thing you could be. My parents, Diane and Roy, had 2 daughters. My younger sister Beth was loud and emotional and always at the center of whatever drama was happening. I was the opposite. I was the one who showed up, signed the papers, drove the 3 hours, and never complained. When my parents needed help with their taxes, they called me. When the family business had paperwork problems, I handled it. I put myself through school at night to earn my accounting license while working full-time during the day. I met a kind and steady man named Dean, married him, and we built a quiet, honest life together. We had 2 daughters, Emma and then Cora. We bought a small house with a wooden fence and paid for everything ourselves. I was proud of that. I never asked my parents for a single penny, and I never felt like I needed to. Every Christmas Eve, the whole family gathered at my parents' house. It was a kind of tradition that felt like it had always existed and always would. The living room would glow with the lights from the same old tree, and the whole house smelled like the cinnamon rolls my mother made every year without fail. My aunt and uncle would come. Beth and her twin kids, Aiden and Olivia, would be there. Dean and I would arrive with Emma and Cora. For years, it was warm and familiar and good. 2 years ago, something shifted. My mother taped a piece of white paper to the wall beside the Christmas stockings. Across the top, in large printed letters, she had written, "Grandchildren who deserve gifts this year." She explained it as a lesson, a way of teaching children that good behavior and respect lead to rewards. Aiden and Olivia were on the list. Emma and Cora were not. Emma was 6 years old at the time. Cora was 3. When I quietly asked my mother why my girls had been left off, she crossed her arms and told me they hadn't shown enough respect. I asked what kind of respect a 3-year-old was expected to demonstrate. She didn't have an answer. I asked Beth if she thought the list was unkind. She didn't even look at me when she said it seemed fair, and that maybe I should work on teaching my kids better manners. My father turned up the volume on the television. I drove my daughters home that night through the dark, and they sat in the back seat, not fully understanding what had happened, but knowing something had hurt them. Emma didn't cry, but she leaned against the window and was very quiet. I promised myself it wouldn't happen again, but it did. The following Christmas, the list appeared on the wall again. Aiden and Olivia received expensive tablets and coats with soft fur on the hoods. Emma sat on the floor and watched her cousins open gift after gift. At some point, she leaned close to me and whispered, "Why didn't Grandma put my name on the paper?" I tried to find words, but everything I came up with felt hollow. Beth looked at me from across the room with a small smile that was not kind and said, "Maybe next year, if they behave." My father looked at the floor. My mother told me that if I wanted my children to have presents, I should have brought them myself. In November that year, my mother sent a group text inviting everyone to Christmas Eve and adding, at the end, that children should be on their best behavior. My husband, Dean, saw the message and told me I didn't have to prove anything to anyone. He was right, but Emma had already read the text over my shoulder and was already excited, already talking about making cards for Grandma and Grandpa. She wanted to draw a reindeer. Dean and I watched our daughter spend 3 weekends on those cards. Emma practiced her handwriting until Merry Christmas looked just right. Cora pressed so many gold stars onto her card that they tumbled off the edges. Dean looked at me one evening and said quietly that if our girls got hurt again, we were not coming back. I told him I agreed, but there was something I had not yet told him, something I had discovered 2 months earlier and was still trying to fully understand. Back in August, Dean and I had decided to refinance our home loan to lower our monthly payments. It should have been simple. We had never missed a payment in our lives. But a woman from the bank named Sandra called me, and her voice had a careful, cautious quality to it. She said everything looked fine for Dean, but there was an account attached to my name that she needed to discuss. I sat down at the kitchen table and pulled up my full credit report on my laptop. I scrolled through the familiar entries, my mortgage, my car, and then I saw it. On the third page was a line of credit I had never opened. It had been started in March of 2017 with a limit of $200,000. My name was on it, my social security number, my birthday. Everything was mine except the memory of ever agreeing to it. I didn't sleep that night. I requested the full records from the bank and spent hours going through them the way I would go through records for a client at work. March of 2017 came back to me slowly. That was the year my father's construction business was struggling. He had called it a reorganization, but really he was drowning. I had driven to see my parents that spring. My mother made soup. My father looked exhausted. At some point, he pushed a stack of papers across the table and asked me to sign, explaining it was something small to help the business keep going. I trusted him. He was my father. I signed without reading closely, because that was what you did when you were the reliable one and someone you loved needed help. The bank records told a different story. The mail for that account had been going to my parents' address, which is why I had never seen a statement or a bill. For 8 years, money had been pulled from that line of credit in my name. When the records arrived, I could see that the signatures on the original application was not quite right. Someone had tried to copy my handwriting. The total balance owed was $148,000. I sat in the dark for a long time after reading that number. Then I did what I know how to do. I worked. I spent 3 weeks going through every transaction, organizing withdrawals by date, tracing where each dollar went. The pattern was clear once I saw it. Every September, when school started, a large amount was withdrawn. Every December, right before Christmas, even more came out. In December, the year my daughters first appeared on no list at all, nearly $20,000 was taken from that account. I followed the money from my parents' accounts into a separate account that held only my mother's name, and from there flowed outward. It paid Beth's rent. It paid for a car. It paid the tuition at the private school where Aiden and Olivia were enrolled. The school Beth had told everyone the kids attended on a scholarship. I compiled everything into a 12-page report. I used yellow and blue markers to highlight the key entries. The numbers told a simple story once they were organized. My parents had used my identity to fund a lifestyle they could not afford, and my sister had benefited from it for years without, as far as I could tell, asking any questions. The reason my daughters had been left off that Christmas list was not about manners or behavior or respect. It was because my mother needed me at a distance. If she made me feel unwelcome, if she pushed me to the edges of the family, I was less likely to look closely at anything. The list was a tool. It was designed to keep me out. I thought about Emma drawing her reindeer with her careful, hopeful handwriting. I thought about Cora and her gold stars falling off the edges of the page. My chest ached in a way I hadn't expected. I called a colleague named Renee who specializes in identity theft cases, and she walked me through exactly what I needed to do. I would need to sign a legal affidavit stating that I had not opened the account. Once filed, the bank was required to investigate. I also met with a lawyer who explained that what my parents had done met the legal definition of identity theft and fraud. He told me the bank could remove the debt from my name and transfer full liability to my parents. He said something I've thought about many times since. Leah, you can't take back a bell once it's been rung. I knew he was right. I filed the paperwork. I chose to wait until Christmas Eve. I want to be honest about my reasons. I wasn't trying to be cruel or dramatic, but I had spent 2 years watching my daughters be quietly humiliated in front of the same group of people. My aunt and uncle, my sister, my father, they had all sat in that living room and watched it happen and said nothing. The people who had witnessed the harm deserved to understand where it came from. I put the report in a clean folder, placed the folder in a red gift box, and tied a white ribbon around it. Emma wrote the tag herself. From the girls, it said, in her best handwriting, she was happy to help and didn't know what was inside. On Christmas Eve morning, I almost left the box at home. Standing in my kitchen, I thought about how much simpler it would be to stay quiet one more time. Then I picked it up and put it in my bag. My parents' house looked exactly as it always had. Lights outside, the smell of cinnamon, the same tree glowing in the corner. Beth was already there with Aiden and Olivia. My aunt and uncle sat on the sofa, and there was a list taped to the wall beside the stockings. This year it was longer. My mother had written notes next to Beth's children's names, explaining what they had done to earn their place on it. My daughters' names were absent again. My mother stood and read the list aloud the way she had done before. When she finished, she mentioned that Emma and Cora could try again next year. That was the moment I had been waiting for. I stood up without raising my voice, walked to the tree, and picked up the red box. Dean took our girls into the kitchen so they wouldn't have to watch. Once the door was closed, I carried the box to my mother and asked her to open it now, telling her it was from the girls. She looked confused but lifted the lid, took out the folder, and began to read. I watched her face go pale as she reached the first page. She saw the account number. She saw the $148,000. She looked up at me and whispered, "Where did you get this?" I told her I got it from the bank, and then I told the whole room exactly what the numbers said. I explained the 8 years of withdrawals. I explained where the money had gone. I explained that the private school tuition, the rent, the Christmas gifts had all been paid with money borrowed in my name without my knowledge. I told them that the reason my daughters were never on the list was because my mother needed to keep me too hurt and too distant to ever look closely at her finances. Beth started to raise her voice, accusing me of trying to destroy Christmas. Then she got the pages that showed her rent payments and went quiet. My mother began to cry, saying they had intended to fix it and that they had been under terrible pressure. My father finally spoke, but he did not apologize. He said only that he had never wanted me to find out. My aunt and uncle stood up, put on their coats, and left without saying much of anything. I heard my daughters laughing at something in the kitchen, and it steadied me completely. We gathered our things, said goodbye to no one in particular, and drove home. By February, the bank had officially transferred the debt to my parents' names. My credit report was corrected by April. Dean and I refinanced the house the way we had originally planned, and we started saving money the way we had always hoped to. Beth called once to tell me I had ruined everything, and I let it go to voicemail. My parents sent a text saying they had made mistakes, but the word sorry never appeared in it. We don't go to Christmas Eve at my parents' house anymore. We stay home now and make our own traditions. Emma's reindeer card is taped to our refrigerator. She drew it with red and brown markers, and the reindeer has a very large nose and a very happy expression, and I think it is the best piece of art I have ever seen. Our girls are thriving. They have never once had to wonder if they were good enough. What I know now, and what I wish I had understood sooner, is this: you should never have to earn your place in a family. Being quiet and dependable and good is not a debt you owe to people who love you. And if someone is keeping you at a distance, it is worth asking yourself what they might not want you to see. Numbers do not lie. Neither does kindness when it is real. And neither does a look on a child's face when she finally understands that she is loved exactly as she is, without a list, without conditions, without having to prove a single thing.